The way you presented it just shows a different perspective and a new way of looking at the work that we do at Tango.
So, what does it mean to be the VP of Cloud? The last 4 weeks, if I can go by that, I would say it's a lot of meetings. There's some talking involved. There's some writing involved. There's lots of listening involved. Nothing in terms of what a product person proper actually does in their life, which is mostly pushing pixels around. That means prototyping or UX development, or writing pseudocode, which is not a coding language exactly, but rather instruction set, a to-do for the developers. Ideations, hypothesis, these sorts of things. That's the fun stuff. And so how do we get to that? How do we get to do that? Okay. The trick here is to achieve all of those requirements while not losing your mind, let's say. Because if you look at it as a summary or like as a individual tasks and activities that you have to do, it's it would be 13 or however whatever the total was, 20 requirements for the job. And I know I'm being literal here. I know that the job is what it is, and that's fine. But when I onboarded with a certain set of expectations and activities in mind, and those are right. They're good. They're solid. They are accurate. The trick is, how do you do one thing while doing all of those other things? So I'll take you back to my first exposure to this position as it was listed on LinkedIn's job postings, what Tango was looking for. And so we will, at the end, each for ourselves, be able to say, the requirements were such, and the 6 chapters that were laid out post those requirements seem like they are meeting the objectives. And if that's not the case, I'd like to hear from you. Or if that is the case, I'd like to hear from you. Take this as an example. Develop communication tools and channels to provide transparency on product strategy, roadmaps, delivery plans, and schedules, and ensure they're all continually maintained. Well, partly the reason I'm doing this state of cloud right now is it's a communication tool. It provides transparency on product strategy, etc. So sit back, pour yourself a cup of Joe, kick up your feet, and enjoy the show. Establish formal customer engagement programs to strengthen customer relationship and ensure flow of input into product strategy and product roadmaps. We've done that by implementing an innovation framework and injecting this into one of the distinct steps, customer engagement. I've personally committed to 8 customer conversations, customer development conversations per cycle, which is 28 days, so roughly a month. 6 months out of the year. So we'll have direct knowledge from the horse's mouth. My focus, Cloud's focus, is to be a customer-centric product, customer-centric business unit, and I'm sure those conversations will be a lot more voluminous than 42 or whatnot. Flow of input is the thing that I wanted to highlight here because what does it take to successfully establish a business unit. And that we can spend days and weeks and years answering that question, but one of the answers has to be focus, unrelenting, uncompromising focus. It's mathematical. If you have X number of hours per day and you decide to unreasonably focus on a problem, whatever that problem might be, you will inevitably chip away at that problem. But in order to focus on that problem, there's something that's being implied and not said. So let's say it. It demands that we block out everything else, or as much as possible, because 100% is impossible. And so I've noticed already that, for example, I myself, as well as my team, will have to defend our calendars as much as possible. I am so guilty of this. I'm a bit of a social butterfly. I love picnics. I'm dressing up for Halloween. I'll see you guys in Parsippany. I will be there. Canned drives, meetings of all sorts. All of that stuff is extremely valuable and conducive to camaraderie and good work. But when it comes to embryonic stage, think of it as a new parent, right? It's like you have to shut down a lot of the distractions and focus on the thing that the baby needs. And so I will attempt to do better in that regard. And I've been imploring my team to do that as well. 100% is impossible and unnecessary, but some percentage would be good. Evangelize the company's product and solutions at industry conferences, user conferences, and events, and with key clients in the industry and analysts. Evangelize. Another thing that Bob said to me, he said, you should write a book and then write about writing a book and then do a video series on YouTube about the process of writing a book. So Bob very much wants me to use all parts of the buffalo, which was the catalyst and the language that I needed to muster up courage to expose my thinking at this very early stage on how to do all of these things. So thank you, Bob. One of the things I plan on doing with this content is publishing it on YouTube and LinkedIn. So thus evangelizing what it is that we do at Tango. And what we're doing at Tango is erecting this innovation practice. And that's a huge deal. That's a big deal for a couple of reasons. It's still unusual. It's becoming less usual, and that's reason number two. But it's unusual for a corporation to hire a startup guy, bring him in, and say, hey, set up an innovation practice here. And here, use cloud to do it. It's a privilege and an honor. And I should be so lucky. We should all be so lucky to have that job. And then it's a trend. I was interviewing with several corporation type companies. Kroger Digital comes to mind for the same kind of position. About 3 years ago, I was in the job market after my startup sold and before I went to the startup incubator. And 3 years ago, I wasn't having those kinds of conversations with companies. Nobody was looking to hire startup guy at corporation, and then to erect an innovation practice to boot. So times they are certainly a changing, as Dylan says. And so evangelizing is part of it. And what we're doing here is interesting to public at large. So these frameworks will be distilled and shared with public at large. A key aspect of the role is to elevate the commercial and business focus of the product team supporting this product. I'm not sure if one of the 13 highlights from the job posting I chose has to do with growing the team. It should. But team to me is everything. So here's how a corporation splits up its tasks. It takes a singular task and chops it up assembly line style, and hands it off. Parts distinct to different people for execution. And a person that's executing one part of the task may not know what the other persons are doing. This probably sounds familiar to anyone who's been a person for any length of time. But it's particularly pronounced in corporate culture. When we build a startup, there's only one task. And it's to build the startup. It's to pave the path of purchase between the customer and the bank account owned by the startup. And cloud is very much one such startup. That's the only task, and everyone is on that task, usually elbow to elbow, huddled up in a room at a table or virtual room or table, and everyone's 100% on the same page. So one of the things that I've decided to do, and we'll talk about time management later in greater detail, but I've carved out time for my team and myself to spend 4 hours per week, every week. That's another thing. If a meeting's worth having, it's worth having every week. Otherwise, is it worth having? Let's discuss. 4 hours every Friday where myself and my team come together, and technically we are wrapping up the previous week's sprint. And we are prepping for the next week's sprint. But that's only on the surface. What's happening is a chunk of time on the calendar in which time stops. There's nothing else to do. The sprint is done. The new sprint didn't start. All we have to do now is figure out what we've done, what we can do better next week. And if we fail, we will not fail for the lack of communication. This is the thing. Cultivate a deep understanding of cloud expense management space, including engagement with all segments of the customer base. My first innovation cycle, my first 28 days, starting in October 25th, I'll talk more about this very soon, will be focused very much on the pipeline and talking to the customers. And I've been talking with internal resources a whole bunch as well to get myself up to speed on expense management space at large and cloud expense management specifically. There's a lot there. And we have a lot of great brain trust inside Tango, with literal decades in the industry, with historic perspectives that blow my mind. So We all know who I'm talking about. Your Ed Espinosas of the world and guys like that is just incredible. Ensure UX is a standard component of the development lifecycle with a relentless focus on world-class UX. Apologies. I've been sick with flu this week. And part of Tango's culture is this, like, stay at home, don't bring your germs to work. And it's been just such an incredible blessing to, feel sort of miserable, but have a distraction of work to take your mind off your lungs. They're just giving up. Anyways. Jason of the UX team, I hope you're listening. But one of the things that attracted me to Tango and to this position is that user experience is everything. And I take it seriously. If you write down the words that say we want world-class UX and want to relentlessly focus on UX, I'm going to make sure we focus on UX. So be careful what you wish for, Bob. World-class UX. If you tell me that you want world-class UX, well, gosh darn it, you're going to get it. But it comes at a cost. The planning and the distinct pieces that have to be worked out before the developers are engaged to code out whatever software needs to be coded out. There's a process there, and it can be controlled, it can be sped up, it can be fine-tuned, and it can produce world-class UX. But going from, let's say, corporate culture to world-class UX will result in some friction. Just ask UX Jason about. But I take that part seriously, and I've worked it into the model as well, because I take UX seriously. Define, implement, and maintain best practices and processes to ensure efficiencies, consistency, and quality in meeting team and corporate objectives. So that's what I'm doing. I'm defining the frameworks. I'm defining the stages through which we will move as we develop the product. One of the challenges that corporations have already, and it's only going to get worse, is this idea of remote employees. It's an incredible gift to be able to work in your jammies from the bed. Last week I was down with the flu. It didn't hit me as hard as it could. I wasn't down and out. I was still fine. I was, in fact, lucky to have work as distraction. But to avoid infecting everybody else, I stayed my ass home. And to be able to do that, it's just incredible. And this is becoming more and more the case. Everyone keeps telling me about how their parents or their spouse or whoever like looks at them at home or something like that. What are you doing? I'm working. What do you mean you're working? You're not at work. How are you working? That's a hard concept to grasp for older generations. And it's a given for younger generations. And so what does that mean? It means that increasingly we won't be eyeball to eyeball. We won't be elbow to elbow. We won't have our facial expressions and our bodies to understand and gather information about the individual. All we have is a voice and the window in which the internet lives. the thing through which you're looking at this presentation right now. That's all there is. And it's very easy to lose a thread. It's very easy to not know where everyone is and what everyone's up to, etc. And so part of the goal of some of these frameworks, and particularly the Gartner Innovation Framework, which I will get into very soon, is designed to define the stages, distinct stages in our journey. And then it's Groundhog Day, all the way. Everything that you're going to see is designed to repeat itself. And this will, again, remove variables, increase predictability. It'll help us understand where we are in the process, and it will help us to be on the same page. Increasingly difficult, considering the remote nature of our jobs. Okay, what else? The job is a lot bigger than I thought it was. So when I was hired, I was told I have a team of 2 direct reports. The day I started, EJ walked into my office and said, "I'm going to be a marketing person." So I got a 3rd on the first day. And then about 2 weeks into it, I was in a meeting with Yakov, among other people. And in a very official looking spreadsheet, it said that there were 10 resources on cloud. I had that funny feeling in my stomach when you thought you knew, and then turns out you didn't. And so I asked Shireen, who's the product owner on cloud, and someone who's going to not only help me, but really be in charge of and take control of the process engineering portion of the innovative practice. But I asked Shireen to compile a list of all people who are involved in cloud, 4 hours per week or more. And Shireen came up with 22 people, and that's where I stopped my investigation, because I was scared what I might unearth beyond that. It's scary because I am supposed to be the person who knows what's going on with the cloud. Sure, I knew. So I still have an excuse for not knowing. But pretty soon, that new label is going to wear off, and someone's going to need to know what's going on in the cloud. And so this whole process is designed to help me, to help my team, and to help Tango at large have a full picture of cloud activities. There is no single source of truth on cloud, and we need to build it. Here's another one: drive innovation across the product suite, identifying and defining solutions that anticipate changing customer and market environments. So innovation is in the job description. Cloud is a very important future play for Tango. And this is my future and this is your future. So if any of this seems unreasonable, impossible, although I like to say impossible as a nod to The Simpsons, then, you know, I'm sharing this, and everyone should feel free to voice their opinion and, you know, speak now and tell us what you think. Establish sales pipeline, booking and revenue targets for Tango Cloud, and coordinate plans to meet and beat the numbers across sales, product marketing, and marketing functions. A product person's job is to deliver the roadmap. That description does not fit the description of product person inside Tango. I come from the startup world where, there it is, 15 minutes. Wow. So let's just conclude this thought, in which the boundaries between responsibilities are non-existent and everybody does everything. I ran my own startup, SaaS marketing startup for 5 years. We've had some Fortune 500 customers, Sears, Tom Shoes, Godiva, Cottonelle, etc. Consumer-facing brands mostly. And I don't want to say literally, although sometimes literally, but very much metaphorically, have grabbed these customers by the hand and walked them into our SaaS platform, set them up, and made them use it. If I can't do it, how is anyone else expected to? And there's a whole range of activities that have to do with ensuring that the others who are managing the pipeline proper, the sales team, the marketing team, etc., have what they need to do what they need to do as well. So the first innovation cycle, next month essentially, my focus will be the pipeline. And this is what it means to limit ourselves in time. Perhaps next time I'll go faster, but help found. And so let's get to work. We will make cloud the de facto standard for cloud expense management. That's my job. I can't possibly do it, certainly not alone. And I need everyone's help. I need my team's help. I need Tango's at large help to make this happen. And part of the reason why I'm sharing this is because I want you to understand what it is that we're trying to do, how we're doing it, and why